Those cancel out. That leaves me with 1/2. So this is my period. Okay. Ooh. Cotangent. We haven't really worked with that in class yet, but I'm going to tell you right now that cotangent has the same period as tangent does. So my period, instead of being 2 pi, it's going to be pi divided by b. So my period is pi divided by 3. Okay, to get the phase shift, I have to factor. So in this case, there's a 1, so I don't have to factor anything out. That tells me that I have to go backwards pi. Now I have a 2. So I'm going to have to factor out that 2. When I divide by 2, and you might have to try this on your own, when I divide by 2, I'm going to end up with a pi over 8. That tells me my phase shift is to the right, pi over 8. Let's do this one. I have to factor out a 4 pi. So I'm going to have to do pi divided by 4 pi. And if you simplify that, you're going to get a 1/4. That tells me I'm going to go in this direction, 1 over 4. Okay, last one, phase shift. I got to factor this out. I'll go below it. If I factor out the 3, I'm dividing by 3, which is going to give me a pi over 6. That means my phase shift is this way, pi over 6. Okay. The last some equations. So we just really need to figure out what all my different letters are. So what's A, what's B, what's C? Actually, that's C over B for the phase shift, and D. Well, it doesn't look like this got shifted up or down any, so my center line is at 0, so there's no shift. To get up to the top or down to the bottom, I have to go 3 tick marks. Okay, if this whole thing is 4 pi, this much is 2 pi. Okay. How many cycles did I have in 2 pi? Oopsie, sorry, this got moved. Well, I only have 1 full cycle, right? So B, the number of cycles in 2 pi, is 1. My phase shift has to do with where I started. Well, sine starts at the center line. This starts at the center line, so there's no phase shift. So my equation is going to be y equals 3 sine, that goes in front of the x, so 1x minus nothing, plus or minus nothing. Let's try this one. Now we have cosine. Okay, again, it doesn't look like my center line got shifted at all, so that's going to be nothing. I go up to 1 tick mark, down to 1 tick mark, so my A is 1. Notice we have, you can see how it's about to level back out to the bottom. I'm only getting through 1 full cycle in 4 pi. So 1 cycle in 4 pi. Well, in order to turn this into a 2 pi, I have to divide by 2, which means I'm going to have a half a cycle in 2 pi. That number there, how many cycles in 2 pi, is my B. Lastly, my phase shift is how far I'm shifted. So cosine starts at the top or the bottom. Here's my closest bottom. So notice I had to shift this way 2 tick marks. Well, 1 tick mark is pi over 4. So 2 tick marks is 2 pi over 4. Well, that just simplifies down to pi over 2. So if I'm going this way at pi over 2. So I'm going to have a y equals amplitude 1 cosine 1/2 x. I'm going to the right, so it's going to be minus pi over 2. Okay. Here's our last one. Write this as a sine function. Okay. Oh, sorry guys, I messed up one thing over here. I hope some of you caught it. Notice cosine was at the bottom. If cosine is at the bottom, then that means my graph is flipped. So I need to make sure this is a negative cosine. Okay, so we're going to write this as a sine function. Now we can go down here. Okay, oop, my center line's still at the middle. Nothing got shifted. I go up or down 2 tick marks. Notice this whole thing is 2 pi now, so as I go through the whole thing, I have 2 cycles, because notice I went down first, so full cycle. I'm going down, that's another cycle. My shift, let's think about where sine starts. Sine starts at the middle, so there's no phase shift, but I'm going down first, so it's flipped. So I'm going to have y equals negative, because it's flipped, 2 sine of 2x minus nothing plus or minus nothing. Okay. So we went through that kind of quickly. I hope that was helpful for you guys. One thing I want to point out, and we'll talk about this in class, is on the test, in addition to writing equations, you might have to match equations to graphs. We did that on the back of worksheet number 3, and we didn't have a lot of time to go over that, but make sure you look at that. There's a key on Blackboard, but that's something I would definitely look at before our test. So there you go.